In the heat of anger, what was the worst decision you've made? What were the consequences? There was this kid at my school who was openly gay. No big deal, I'm all about equality. Except this kid was convinced that he could get with me and make me gay. Every day, he would try to flirt with me and make me super uncomfortable. One day I was changing after basketball practice, and he came in the locker room and smacked me on the ass in front of all my friends. So naturally I beat the shit out of him. I'm a big guy, just about 6'3". The gay guy was maybe 5'6". My friends had to pull me off of him, and when I looked and saw what I had done, I realized the severity of my actions. He was covered in blood and was barely conscious. I thought I had hit him only a couple of times. His parents freaked, and I was almost expelled for committing a hate crime. My parents are convinced that I hate gay people, and they made me take a tolerance class. He moved schools, and I saw him at a gas station once, and he cowered in fear. It sucks to be the bad guy in somebody's life, and if I could go back I would. But I can't. Around when I was 9 years old, my older sister was always a bit of a bully to me. At the time she had a broken leg and was using crutches to get around. While walking down the stairs, she hit me with one of her crutches. Apparently at the time I had had enough of her shit, so I turned and kicked both her crutches out. Halfway down the staircase, she fell down about 9 stairs and probably had to keep the cast on her leg for another few months because of that. Edit, for clarification, my sister was and still is a twat. I had angry make-up sex. She got pregnant and now I'm a father and stuck in an unhappy relationship. Same, around 3 years ago my ex and I decided to have sex because we missed each other. She ended up getting pregnant, so we tried to work things out and be together again. We realized once again why we were better as exes and just told each other we would be the best parents and be as civil as possible. We have a great relationship now, a beautiful 2.5-year-old daughter, and she is remarrying in the winter to a great guy. It's much better being apart and happy. Just make sure you stay in your kid's life, for him/her. I confronted my then wife's lover and he said, "Yeah, I'm fucking her, what are you gonna do about it?" It was dark and I don't think he had seen the golf club that was right next to me. I beat him with it severely and didn't stop until I heard sirens. I was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Don't get me wrong, I believe you regret your actions, but I never understood when people are angry at a person who cheater is cheating with. On same token, that guy should not have said, "What you gonna do about it?" to a drunk angry man. Either way, bad outcome. I have felt some guilt over my actions, but to help you understand what you've never understood, if some random stranger had sex with my current wife, I wouldn't be mad at him. He might not even know she is married. That would be entirely on her. In my case, I knew this guy and he knew me. He'd eaten dinner with me at my house after being introduced to me as a friend of hers. But most of all, it was what he said. I am somewhat sure I would have contained my anger if he just admitted it. Pretty sure I would have believed him if he lied, because that would have been what I wanted to believe, and possibly I would have even forgave him if he apologized. Hopefully we both learned something that night. I don't mean to make you feel bad or anything, but are you still with her? Heavens to God, no. Our relationship ended that night, although the worst was yet to come, because I still had to live with her between being released from jail and being sentenced to prison, sleeping in separate rooms, but she refused to leave and I had nowhere else to go. During that time I did the best I could to take care of her daughter while working full time. She was partying all night and sleeping all day. A few times I was awakened by the sound of her banging random dudes. The worst was when she asked me for a ride to get an abortion. When I finally got locked up, it was a relief to finally be rid of her. The first thing I did when I got out was get a divorce. She could have gotten one easily while I was in prison, but I guess had better things to do. Worst decision I ever made while angry? Telling a friend he was a pussy and just wanted sympathy, so as usual, like most people, turned to threats for that sympathy. Consequences? I saw a good friend blow his brains out that day. Of all the burdens people have expressed in this thread, this has to be one of the largest. Damn man, you alright? It was a long time ago, but every year I'm reminded about it. Got into drunken fight with wife, drove off angrily, crashed into tree, spent a long time in intensive care, almost died, face permanently disfigured. You still together? Still together, bad decision, but it changed my life for the good. When my sister and I were much younger, we fell out, argued, for, probably, the very first time. She was just old enough to be trusted to walk around the house on her own and stuff, and I'm about 5 years older than her. We fell out, I can't remember what over, but, shortly after, she came back into the room we had been in. She was in tears and holding a piece of paper. It was a picture of me and her holding hands and the words, "I'm sorry." I ripped it up in front of her eyes, threw it to the ground and left the room. I'm sure she doesn't remember this, but it still gets to me this day. We get on as well as two siblings possibly could, nowadays. I reckon if I asked her she wouldn't have a clue, but I'll never forget looking at her as she welled up right in front of me. Slapped my girlfriend 10 years ago when I was 18. She said something that made me extremely angry and I slapped her. It wasn't a very hard slap, it was kind of in between. We were driving and I pulled over the side of the road and told her I was extremely sorry and that I would never do it again. I started crying. I was sure she was going to dump me. Most people would say she was stupid to stay with me, but she is an incredibly smart woman. I ultimately had to dump her 5 months later, but I certainly never physically attacked her or any other woman again. The consequences are that I have to live with the shame of having struck a woman whom I loved, and still do, dearly when she did nothing aggressive towards me whatsoever. She proved she was an absolute angel when she forgave me after having done it. The other consequence is that I'm willing to admit that I did it so other young and naive daters don't make the same mistake I did. You don't meet women this kind and dear often. One that will forgive being slapped isn't there because she's trying to manipulate you or cheat on you or anything else. She's there because she really loves you. She probably hates me since I dumped her. I became an atheist. Those were the rules of Christianity. I couldn't be unequally yoked with her. I also kind of hate myself for having done it. She was my first girlfriend and it took a few years to find out just how incredibly unique and kind she was, and how much those traits can be lacking in many women. Don't take anything or anyone for granted. And never excuse what you know you did wrong. My father, who had just lost his job and wife of 20 years, was on methadone for back pain issues. He was living from credit card to credit card and severely depressed. One morning before I had to go to work, he asked me if I'd walk the dog for him since he wasn't feeling up to it. I told him that I had to get to work. He complained to me and I just ignored it. When I came home that night I found him dead in his shower. Looking back, I'm sure that our argument that morning wasn't the reason he killed himself, but if I'd been more compassionate and caring things might have gone differently. A girl chased me out of a bar after an argument we had gotten into. Didn't know she was following me until she punched me in the back of my head. Turned around and elbowed her. I went to jail for that because I stayed till the cops arrived to give my side of the story. I had to take anger management classes and pay her for the insurance of her injury, emergency room visit / prescribing her ibuprofen, and now I have to show future employers a slip showing my case was dismissed. I don't know much about law, but I have been in some trouble. You may want to get a lawyer and see if you can get that whole thing expunged from your record. That way you wouldn't have to say anything to your employers. That's exactly what I'm in the process of doing now. Not myself, but my dad used to have a serious drinking problem. One night, when I was in high school, I was driving home from work and the town I lived in was very small. I ended up driving behind a truck that I was pretty certain was my dad's. Now, I should add that I was driving with my brights on because one of my headlights was messed up and it wouldn't turn on without having the brights on. Well, I am driving home thinking how funny it is that I ended up behind my dad when he slows down and comes to a complete stop at a curve where I couldn't get around him. I was very confused. He gets out of his car and starts screaming at me from his car. He is calling me all sorts of names and grabs a Frosty from Wendy's and throws it at my car. He ended up throwing it so hard it dented the middle of my hood. I was absolutely terrified. He had gotten mad like this before and I seriously had no idea what I had done to piss him off. He starts walking towards my car, and even though he was a good distance away I could see the look of rage in his eyes. I was physically shaken, so much so that I couldn't even manage to cry because I was so terrified. Turns out, my dad had gotten into an argument with a guy in the Wendy's parking lot who had a similar car, and since I had my brights on, he couldn't tell it was me, not to mention he was probably drunk. When he got to my door, I assume he planned on grabbing the dude out. He just stopped frozen. He got back in his truck and drove away. When I got home, he walked into his room, grabbed a bag and left to stay in a hotel and start getting help. He couldn't look me or my mother in the eye. A Frosty dented your hood? Was it made of cardboard at the time? Plastic cup, and the one by our house did like Blizzard-style Frosties, where you could turn it upside down and it wouldn't come out at all. Shit. Well, at least this was his wake-up call. One of a few unfortunately, but he did successfully sober up eventually. How is he now? He is a lot better. He was in the army, and got involved in narcotics when I was just a baby. He would disappear for weeks on end, but he recovered from that. He then became an alcoholic and now he is sober completely. I think he was a classic case of a vet who didn't know how to handle what he saw. I didn't even know he was in the army until about 4 years ago, when my mom mentioned it. He got mad at her because he told her he didn't want me to know about that time of his life. I was eating some tuna after having a very bad day. My younger brother kept teasing me for something I don't remember now, and wouldn't shut up after I told him to several times. All of a sudden I snap, grab my fork and launch it at him. Fork hits him in the head, 5 seconds later blood starts coming out of his head with increasing intensity. Consequences? A lesson. If you are having a bad day, don't take it out on others. Especially your family, which is the only group of guys that really give a shit about you, plus for life scar on his head. Jesus dude, did you kill him? Thanks God no, but he does have a permanent scar. Soon after that, I realized I actually could have severely injured him. Luckily he was fine. Years ago I was super pissed at my roommate because she couldn't keep a secret. So I punched a framed picture of her that was on the wall. The glass cut into every one of my knuckles. The worst was my thumb. The blood took forever to stop, and I just bandaged it really tight. After about 3 days, I started to notice red streaks running up my arm. I showed my dad, and he took me to the hospital. Turns out, I cut my tendon, and the joint had gotten severely infected. The doctor said that I was hours away from losing my thumb. After surgery, I had to stay in the hospital for 5 days with an IV hooked up. The morphine was nice though. 4 years ago, I had just ended a very serious, very twisted relationship with someone I loved. We were out among mutual friends one night and he decided to hurt me by rubbing his new girlfriend in my face. Well, I got quite angry and decided to try and hurt him back. I talked to a nice guy at the bar and we seemed to get along very well, and I went with him to a party at his friend's house. That's how I ended up getting raped. It took a couple of years to get my head in functioning order enough to sleep with someone, and I still have some trust issues. I regret that night, would take it all back, all the stupid, pitiful anger, if I could, but I also know that what happened has shaped who I am and how strong I am. Wow, I don't even know how to respond to this. Sorry for what happened, but congratulations on fighting through it and becoming the strong person you described yourself as. People are assholes. Was the guy ever caught? No, he was never caught, and the investigation became very personally intrusive, so I eventually stopped hounding them and let it go. This was a difficult decision, but I could only let that night take up so much of my life, and it had gone on long enough that it wouldn't really have led to an arrest. I don't feel the need for justice for me, it doesn't make me angry anymore. I hope he hasn't hurt other women and that he's been apprehended, but I'm not angry or vengeful anymore. Having those kind of feelings means I need to care about this man, even if in a negative light. I'm giving him space in my mind and my heart. He took from my body without permission. He does not deserve any other piece of my life. Edit. Thank you all for the kind words and support. It means a lot. I've answered about as much as I'm going to about it all for the moment. It's been a tough couple of hours, and it's a hell of a lot easier to sound cool and collected online. I got angry at someone who was born and proceeded to treat them like shit for almost 8 years. I was 8 or something when my cousin was born. When he got older, he was always over here. I don't know why I hated my little cousin so much. He was a great kid. I just had this rage. It would manifest in doing tiny little things to hurt him. Maybe trip him, or would just destroy him repeatedly in video games or something. I also used to glare at him a lot when he wasn't looking. When he was about 8, and I was 16 or so, I had to watch him for a little bit, and he wanted to go outside and play with this stupid little golf set, but all I wanted to do was stay in the house and play video games. He dragged me out, he gave me a turn, and I accidentally hit him on the head when I went to swing. And by accidentally, I mean completely on purpose, but looked like it was accident. So, I hit him. He broke down crying, had a small gash on his head. I took him into the house and cleaned his cut, and indifferent to his crying, I just coldly said it was an accident. Then he replies through tears, "It's okay, I know you wouldn't hurt me on purpose." That's when it hit me, almost like I hit him. That's when I realized what a fucking shitty human being I had been. I treated him like he was fucking trash. What the fuck was I doing? Why the fuck was I so angry? After that, it just went away. I'd say that we're pretty much best friends since then. Wow, that one made me want to cry. A little kid's innocence really yanks on your feels. Yeah, it hit me like a baseball bat. The kid looked up to me, I suppose thought of me like a brother, and I treated him like shit. That's when I realized how shitty of a fucking human I was. I say at the end, since then, but I don't think I ever wasn't a best friend, in his eyes at least. My younger brother was troubled in his teens, to say the least. He had a lot of anger issues. I've never been a fighter, however he and my older brother were totally different. They saw violence as the only answer to disagreements. Anyway, one night I'm in my house with my friends and I get a call from my mom. My younger brother and his friend were at her house tormenting her. They were both shit-faced drunk. I made my way there. She only stays a couple of streets away. In the time it took me to get there, she'd called the police after my brother had hit her and thrown her down the stairs. She'd managed to get him out the house, but he and his friend were trying to break the door down to get back in. My brother had quite the reputation with the local police, and so they sent as many resources as they could, 5 police cars and a police dog unit. My mom's street was lit up in blue and red flashing lights by the time I got there. My brother and his friend had ran into the large park behind my mom's house when they heard the sirens of the police, so the dog unit was out trying to find them while I comforted my mom. They eventually were found hiding in a bush and dragged back to a police car in cuffs. This was a Friday night. My brother was supposed to be working all weekend, but I knew if they took him away he would be locked up until the Monday at the earliest. I spoke to the policeman in charge and convinced him that I could control my brother when he was drunk, lie, and pleaded with them to let him come stay at my house rather than lock him up. My mom tearfully agreed and they let me walk away with him. The policeman, however, gave me his mobile number and told me to phone him direct if there was any more trouble with my brother, as he would be patrolling the area most of the night anyway. My brother and I walk away, and to begin with, no problems. Then as we get closer to mine, the drunken slurs start and he tells me he hates me, this is all my fault, he's ashamed to be my brother because I'm gay, etc., etc. So, I decide I don't want him to come to mine and reach into my pocket to get my phone so that I could phone that policeman and just have him taken away. At that precise moment, I look up and my brother has swung a punch in my direction. I dodged it and clocked him in the side of the head with my phone, smashing it. He almost lost balance, but then definitely did when I punched him again. I then completely lost it. All the rage for what he had done to my mom, for what he'd said to me, for the way he acted, it all came out. I was kicking him repeatedly, I was wearing Timberland boots, and punching him over and over. It wasn't until I had sat on him, pinning him to the ground and punched him one final time that I realized what I'd done. I watched as his head flopped back, his eyes rolled back into his head, and a pool of blood appear under his head. I was certain he was dead. I can't phone for help, I've smashed my phone. I can't shout for help, it's 2 a.m. and there's nobody around. Right then I make the single scariest decision I've ever made. I put my coat under his head and left him there in the pouring rain. I ran back to my house faster than any human has probably ever moved. I get to mine, burst in the door, shout at my friends to call an ambulance, tell them where my brother is, then take off running again back to him. Luckily, he's still lying there, out cold, but breathing. One of my friends arrives a minute or so later. We keep him warm until the ambulance arrives. That policeman also arrived at the same time. He said it was likely my brother wouldn't remember what happened, he was that drunk, and that he wouldn't put this in his final report. I got in the ambulance with him to the hospital and then sat there for the next 8 hours waiting for him to regain consciousness. When he was able to have a visitor in the room, I walked through, ready to apologize. What happened next blew me away. He broke down in tears immediately, apologizing for always being such an insufferable asshole, begging me to forgive him. And that was the end of my brother's troubled teen years. He ended up with a broken nose, half an ear missing, from scraping against the ground as I kicked him, a fractured cheekbone, and a hairline fracture in his skull. He couldn't go to work for a month, which was made even more torturous for him because my mom, understandably, refused to talk to him or do anything for him. They didn't speak for about 18 months until he gave her first grandchild. That brought the whole family together and completely changed him. Now our family are stronger than ever. We may have come out the other side stronger, but that feeling where I thought I'd killed my younger brother, that feeling will always make that angry decision the worst decision I've ever made. Apologies if this comes out as a wall of text, I've just typed it on my phone. This also means I may have to edit a few times to clear up any typos because of fucking autocorrect. TLDR, my brother beat up my mom, so I beat him to within an inch of his life. How does your family get along now? That seemed like a pretty serious deal. We get along fine now. He and his girlfriend having a kid completely changed him as a person. It made him an adult. Yeah, we still have our fallouts from time to time, just as any other family, but nothing serious. My brother was a real evil little shit aged 13 to 18. Nobody knows why, I guess it was a case of him getting in with the wrong crowd or whatever. Regardless, that night not only changed the dynamics of our relationship, but it was a real wake-up call for him. Word got out what he'd done to my mom and a lot people disowned him. Other than my mom not talking to him, all he had left in the world was family. It totally brought us all together, but I'll always regret the way in which it happened. Didn't say goodbye to my mom the last time I ever saw her. Wished in my head she'd die. Only because I was pissed off she and my brother were going to Fiji without me and I was stuck with having to go to work, but I didn't realize it was because her radiation therapy hadn't worked and she was pretty much going home to die. I had no idea it had progressed to that stage, so when she came to hug me I turned away, so she gave me a side hug. Well, that was the best she could do and she was pretty weak at that stage. I still feel like the shittiest person alive thinking about her face that morning and her little bony frame pressed up against me. That's a lot to carry, I'm sorry. Did your family not tell you what was going on? Well, there were a couple of reasons why I didn't realize she was going to die. Mainly, I was a bitchy 18-year-old who was totally engrossed in my own affairs, and I just started going out to clubs and stuff, so that was foremost in my head. Secondly, I arrived back from a week-long holiday the day before they left. I'd gone to Melbourne to visit my half-sister for the first time and I'd had such a good trip that I was cross when I brought some pictures home to show my mom and she apologized and told me she was tired and she'd have a look at them in the morning. While I was away, her general practitioner had come for a home visit and given her a month at best, and I wasn't told about that until after she died. Nobody really told me anything about that stuff. My parents were divorced, so dad didn't know shit. My brother at home was 13 at the time. Mom's friends seemed to think that I was heartless and disinterested, so they never filled me in on anything, and my best friend told me in the days after she died that the gossip was that people couldn't believe I'd gone away for a week while my mom was dying, and that my friend also presumed I didn't love her. Needless to say, I was pretty fucked up for at least a year, depressed and whatnot. I had to go and live with my dad and his wife for a while, who took me to a doctor and really took care of me. So I thought, hey, I still have my dad, I'll look after him and I won't fuck up this time. It was a pretty juvenile thought process, really. My stepmom ended up leaving my dad for work reasons, moved away, and he took up drinking big time. We drank a lot together, which definitely was a shitty idea. I decided I'd go back to study, moved back to the city. Dad did not cope on his own. Long story short, he ended up extremely sick and broke, in a nursing home because none of his older kids from his first marriage wanted to help and my little brother and I didn't have money to look after him. I used to visit him on weekends. He had alcohol-related dementia, which worsened over time. The last time I saw him and he was properly awake, he mistook my friend who came along for me and treated me like we'd just met. I was a bit annoyed, but even more so when this same friend told me shortly after she'd had sex with my now ex-boyfriend. So I didn't go for a couple of months and he ended up in hospital and died like a week later. So anger fucked me up twice big time, really. Sorry for the long reply. Edit. Hey, thanks for the nice comments, guys. I didn't realize anyone was going to take any interest in my story. I also should have explained that I guess my mom didn't tell me herself, probably because she was a super positive kind of person. In the last couple of months before she passed, she was still telling me her plans about what she was going to be doing. In her words, when I get better. She had plans for where she was going to go forward with her career. She had a psychology degree, but worked with disabled people in a respite center. It didn't seem like she could die to me, really. That added to my shock, I guess. My mother died from breast cancer 5 years ago. She was an English teacher, so it seemed only natural that she would have written a diary to my brother, me and my sister. Me and my twin brother were only 12 at the time in which she passed away. We knew the gravity of the situation. Mom had told us everything about what was going to happen. When we got copies of the diary, one thing that really stuck out was this: don't waste even 1 second feeling guilty about anything you may have said or done to me. It does not matter. I love you all anyway, and I know that you all love me. Even if your last words to me were, I hate you for not letting me go to that party. My sister was quite the rowdy teenager. This bit isn't part of her diary. I don't care. I love you when you were babies, and I love you just as much when you were door-slamming teenagers. I used to feel guilty about some of the things I had said to my mom in the weeks before she died. Now that I am a mom myself, I know that this would not have mattered to her. You will understand this when you become parents yourselves. I'm sure your mom understood and loved you.